It starts with a rumor, a whisper passed from generation to generation, never written, never confirmed. Beneath Buenos Aires, somewhere below the pavement and plazas, there are rooms that were never meant to be found. Not tunnels of escape, but bunkers of control. During the darkest years of Argentina's history, from 1976 to 1983, the military dictatorship waged a war not against an enemy nation, but against its own people. They called it the Proceso de Reorganización Nacional, but most know it by a simpler name, the Dirty War. 30,000 people vanished. They were taken from their homes, their universities, their workplaces, accused of being subversive, communists, dissidents. Most of them never returned. The military said nothing, the press printed nothing, families received no explanation, no body, no grave. But what's less known is where many of those people were taken and where they were held. Beneath the visible surface of Buenos Aires, hidden under government buildings, hospitals and abandoned schools, were a series of underground detention centers. Some were officially documented, like the infamous ESMA, the Navy School of Mechanics, which today operates as a memorial, but others were never meant to be uncovered. There are reports, dozens of them, collected by journalists and human rights groups since the 1980s, describing strange access points discovered beneath old police stations. Rooms with no documented purpose. Concrete cells with reinforced walls, not meant to keep people out, but to keep people inside, with no sound, no light, no way out. In some locations, underground passages connected distant buildings through sewer-like corridors, allowing security forces to move detainees without being seen above ground. In 2004, construction workers renovating a ministry building near Plaza de Mayo uncovered a sealed staircase behind a false wall. At the bottom, they found 3 doors, one of them welded shut. Behind it, a narrow hallway leading to a series of rooms, each lined with rusted hooks embedded into the ceiling and walls. The space had no ventilation, no windows, and was completely off the official floor plans. When investigators arrived, the case was quickly redirected to federal jurisdiction, then quietly buried in bureaucracy. The media moved on, but human rights investigators didn't forget. Survivors of the regime, the few who made it out, began to recognize the layout. One of them, a professor named Ana Beatriz Mendez, had been detained for 8 months in 1978. She described being blindfolded, brought down a spiral staircase, and locked in a cell with damp walls and the sound of water running nearby. She believed it was near the city center, possibly close to the Casa Rosada. When shown photographs of the space discovered in 2004, she broke down. "That was it," she whispered. "That's where they took me." But the question is, how many more places like that exist? The Argentine military operated with a level of secrecy unmatched in Latin America during that era. They kept no official records of where most detainees were held. When democracy returned in 1983, the transitional government focused on surface-level accountability. Trials were held, some officers were convicted, but much of the infrastructure used to disappear people was never mapped, never exposed, never dismantled. Satellite imagery from the early 2000s revealed unusually dense structures beneath government districts. Anomalies in the earth that didn't align with modern plumbing or transit systems. Engineers reviewing metro expansion blueprints noted old civil defense bunkers from the Cold War era, built under the pretext of nuclear protection, that were co-opted by the regime for classified operations. These bunkers were never registered with City Hall. They were built by military contractors with no public oversight, and most of them still exist. One such location, buried beneath a now abandoned courthouse in San Telmo, was discovered in 2017 by a team of documentary filmmakers. What they found was staggering. A 3-room sublevel with iron-reinforced doors, soundproofed walls, and a drainage system running directly into the city's sewer grid. In one room, the number 11 was painted in black, over and over again, covering every inch of the wall. No one has explained its meaning, but those who study the regime know what the numbers mean. Cells were often unnumbered, deliberately made to disorient. But in cases where a detainee was marked for transfer, or worse, for el vuelo, the death flights, a number would be repeated. 11 was used more than once. Testimonies from former Navy officers confirmed it was a signal number, a countdown. There's a theory among historians and urban archaeologists that beneath Buenos Aires exists an entire network, a spiderweb of hidden bunkers linked by disused maintenance tunnels, storm drains, and wartime shelters. A city beneath the city, not made for survival, but for silence. The military didn't just suppress voices, they buried them, and the dirt is still shifting. They never planned to dig monuments. These weren't meant to be remembered. No names carved into the concrete, no plaques on the wall, just silence. These bunkers were not built to survive a war. They were built to erase people from history. Beneath Buenos Aires, evidence of these war rooms continues to emerge, not through official channels, but through accidents, whispers, and the persistence of those who refuse to forget. In 2010, a routine maintenance crew repairing drainage near the Congreso Nacional broke through a concrete wall that wasn't on any map. Behind it, they found a narrow stairwell that led into a chamber 2 stories below ground. The room was small, damp, with walls lined in metal sheets, and in the center, bolted to the floor, was an old iron chair, rusted through at the joints. A single light fixture hung above it, shattered long ago. On the walls were tally marks, hundreds of them, faint, etched into the metal like desperate scratches. There was no official comment. The area was resealed. Photos were leaked. No media coverage followed. What makes these discoveries so disturbing isn't just what they were used for, but how many of them remain unaccounted for. After the dictatorship fell, the military handed over limited records. Some facilities like ESMA and Club Atletico were documented because survivors came forward. But many detainees were moved between multiple sites, often in the dead of night, blindfolded, drugged, and disoriented. When they were taken underground, they lost all sense of place. Some thought they were still in Buenos Aires. Others believed they had been moved to another city entirely. That uncertainty was deliberate. The junta's methods weren't just about repression, they were about erasure, psychological dismantling, dislocation, and the underground was perfect for that. No windows, no clocks, no sense of direction, just a voice telling you where to walk, a hand shoving you into a room, and then silence, sometimes for days. One of the most persistent urban legends in Buenos Aires speaks of a tunnel beneath the Avenida 9 de Julio, once used to connect police headquarters with an undisclosed detention center. Officially, the tunnel was built as an escape route during political unrest in the 1950s. But during the 1970s, its purpose changed. Former officers, speaking anonymously to local papers decades later, claimed the tunnel was reinforced, lengthened, and used to transport detainees from the main jail to an off-book facility deep beneath the Ministry of Planning. No documentation confirms this, but street-level anomalies do. In 2018, workers resurfacing pavement along a block of 9 de Julio found their equipment vibrating as if hitting hollow spaces, deep, reinforced cavities under the asphalt. City engineers blamed collapsed storm tunnels, but when independent investigators scanned the area using ground-penetrating radar, the results were clear. Rectangular voids, uniform spacing, metal reinforcement, and stair-like formations descending in 2 directions. No one has accessed them. Permits to excavate have been denied. It's not just Buenos Aires, Rosario, Cordoba, Mendoza. Each city has its own rumors. Churches with locked basements, schools with sealed doors, hospitals where people were taken but never discharged. A 1977 memo uncovered in a declassified military archive referenced Facility A beneath the city of La Plata. It described it as a containment unit for high-risk assets. No map was attached, no location mentioned, just a warning. Do not discuss Facility A over unsecured channels. And yet, the truth still seeps through the cracks. In the summer of 2022, a researcher named Martín Cuello discovered a series of misfiled architectural blueprints in the archives of the University of Buenos Aires. Among them were designs for a 1976 expansion of a police station in the Belgrano district. The plans included a basement level, but also a sub-basement listed simply as Nivel B. No purpose was stated, no measurements, just a hand-drawn rectangle labeled Restricted Access. When Cuello tried to access the site for verification, he was denied entry. 2 days later, the blueprints were gone from the archive. His emails went unanswered, but he had already taken photos. And in one corner of the drawing, nearly invisible beneath the ink, were faint pencil notes. Temporary detainment, no documentation, silence protocol enforced. What's terrifying isn't just that these places existed, it's that they were built to be forgotten, designed to vanish, to live between walls, below floors, behind false doors. The regime didn't want to preserve its power. It wanted to leave no trace of its violence. But concrete cracks, doors rust, maps fade, and history, no matter how deep it's buried, doesn't stay silent forever. There's a growing movement in Argentina, not just to remember, but to uncover. Urban explorers have begun mapping known access points. Architects have started reanalyzing old building plans, looking for missing levels, sealed chambers, inconsistencies. Forensics teams are using modern tech to scan under historic sites. Not for gold or relics, but for the echo of screams in dead concrete. Every city has its underground. But in Argentina, the underground isn't legend. It's evidence, and it's waiting. There's a reason no official map of Buenos Aires includes its full foundation, because beneath the capital's modern skyline lies a fragmented skeleton of rooms, corridors, stairwells, and locked vaults, stitched together not by engineers, but by fear. The dictatorship didn't just weaponize walls and chains, it weaponized space. It turned the ground beneath the city into a maze, not to defend Argentina from outsiders, but to isolate, to confuse, to erase. And the system was efficient. Eyewitnesses who survived the disappearances spoke of being transported not in trucks or planes, but by hand, blindfolded, gagged, guided through short walks, quick elevators, cold stairwells. They remembered the smell of old cement, mildew, copper wires. Some were taken during the day, others in total darkness. But the stories converge on one disturbing detail. Almost all recall going down. Always down. Some of the regime's most brutal interrogators were assigned to what they called internal logistics. These were not men trained in warfare. They were architects, engineers, builders. Their job was to retrofit existing basements into classified processing zones. They created false walls, secondary staircases, and noise insulation systems deep enough to block screams. And when the job was done, those rooms were sealed with reinforced doors, often from the inside, and erased from all blueprints. Several of those men are still alive, but they don't talk. What we do have are remnants. In 2009, a construction crew working near the old Ministry of Justice found a secondary elevator shaft, sealed, unpowered, and undocumented. At its base was a narrow chamber with shackles mounted into the concrete floor and a one-way mirror positioned at head height. The mirror was cracked but still intact. No signs, no labels, just numbers stenciled on the corner. 74D. Historians believe it was an internal code used to mark the year and designation, 1974, Delta Unit. But the file for that code was never found. Some theorize that Buenos Aires' entire administrative quarter is layered above an engineered grid, a ghost infrastructure designed during the Cold War as a civil defense network and later repurposed for silent state terror. In 1985, a declassified memo from a US intelligence source referenced non-compliant subterranean structures in South America that were deemed strategic for political suppression. Argentina was listed. Buenos Aires was underlined. But none of this is taught in schools. None of this is printed in guidebooks. And that's not by accident. Because forgetting was part of the plan. The regime didn't just want to eliminate opposition, it wanted to rewrite reality, to make the idea of resistance feel like a hallucination. If you can't find the room, if there's no door, no record, no name, then maybe nothing happened. Maybe the voices were exaggerating, maybe they're mistaken, but the walls remember. In 2021, forensic archaeologists working in Avellaneda uncovered a series of buried chambers beneath an abandoned courthouse. The rooms were flooded, rotten, filled with rubble. But one door, made of solid steel, still stood. Carved into the inside, scratched into the paint with what looked like a nail, was a name. Just one. Faded, uneven, but legible. It matched the list of the disappeared. Her name had never been spoken in court. She had no grave, but she had scratched herself back into existence. The weight of discovery in these spaces is overwhelming. Investigators report dizziness, nausea, inexplicable cold spots. Whether psychological or real, the effect is always the same. You don't leave unchanged. Because these places were designed not for the body, but for the soul, to crush it, to confuse it, to break it so quietly that no one would know where the pieces were buried. And yet, they remain. Even now, developers breaking ground in older districts sometimes report finding sublayers not listed on deeds. The government often steps in quickly, citing safety concerns. Sites are closed, reports vanish, but locals know the signs. When dogs stop barking, when cement cracks without sound, when humidity rises from dry earth, those are the signals, and people are watching. In recent years, a small but growing group of urban historians, journalists, and descendants of the disappeared have begun mapping unregistered voids. These are points in the city where something exists, a foundation, a tunnel mouth, a sealed shaft, but no record explains it. Using LiDAR scans, magnetometers, and historical overlays, they are creating an unofficial map, a sublayer of memory beneath the architecture of silence. They call it La Capa Fantasma, the phantom layer, and every year it grows. Not because the state admits more, but because the ground won't stay silent, because concrete, like history, can only hold its secrets for so long. And in Buenos Aires, the pressure is building. What was meant to be hidden is being forced back into the light. But the question remains, if these places were built with such precision, such secrecy, such care, what else is still down there? Because not all rooms were made to be found. Some were made to remain closed, but doors rust and footsteps echo, and sometimes the past comes knocking. It's easy to think the past is over, that the horrors of the dirty war are sealed away in books, trials, and fading photographs. But under Buenos Aires, the war never really ended. It shifted, it sank, it was built into the city's bones, and those bones still shift in the dark. In the neighborhood of Villa Devoto, locals have long spoken about vibrations under the pavement late at night. Not earthquakes, not trains, something slower, rhythmic, like machines deep below. Most dismissed it as myth. Just another story from a traumatized city. But in 2020, a group of students from the University of Buenos Aires conducted a series of ground-penetrating radar tests near an old government building slated for demolition. What they found was unnerving. A rectangular anomaly nearly 60 meters long, reinforced, buried under layers of intentionally collapsed earth. Not a natural void, a structure. The building above was never torn down. Permits were revoked. Investigations stalled. And the students, once vocal, stopped talking, but evidence keeps leaking. In 2023, during a sewer expansion project in the district of Flores, workers uncovered a sealed stairwell behind a brick wall. It wasn't on any blueprint. There were no safety warnings. When one of them pried it open, the stairwell descended 32 steps into a metal door. On it was a faded stencil, Z3 Silencio. Inside, they found 5 rooms, empty but intact. In the corners, old wiring, fragments of torn fabric and deep gouges in the concrete. No names, no files, no explanation. The zone was closed within 24 hours. The city declared it structurally unstable, but no damage was ever reported. Some believe these discoveries are random, coincidental, the legacy of old civil engineering or Cold War paranoia. But others, including ex-military sources who have since turned whistleblower, insist that these spaces were never accidents, that they were the product of a doctrine, a philosophy, a military theory of absolute control. Control doesn't begin with force, it begins with the environment. If you can shape the space around a person, remove time, distance, sound, light, you can reshape who they are. You can destroy identity before breaking a single bone. And if you do it underground, where no one can see, you don't just erase the person, you erase the evidence. The architecture becomes the weapon. That's what these bunkers were. Not shelters, not prisons, not even torture chambers in the traditional sense. They were laboratories of silence, and Buenos Aires is full of them. It's no coincidence that even now, many families of the disappeared don't have closure. They never received remains. They were told, if anything, that their loved ones had been transferred. That word appears in thousands of declassified files. Transferido. But to where? No names, no locations, just a word meant to end a conversation, but we're just beginning to ask the right questions. Because the city has started to speak. Moisture rises where it shouldn't. Cement collapses where it was reinforced. Entire blocks show thermal anomalies at night, like something warmer exists beneath them. Not geothermal heat, not infrastructure, just rooms, breathing, waiting. In one case, a private residence in Constitution found that beneath their home was a sealed chamber with remnants of military gear. No one claimed it. No one explained. The owners moved out. They said the house felt wrong. The state continues to deny the existence of a coordinated underground network, but the signs remain. They're in the misaligned walls of government basements, in the bricked-up doors behind train stations, in the blueprints with missing floors and the staircases that descend into nothing, in the memories of the survivors who still wake up gasping for air in rooms they cannot name. Urban explorers call it the subsuelo oscuro, the dark undersoil. It is not a myth, it is a system, and systems don't disappear. They go dormant. We built over them, paved them, renamed the streets, installed lights. But underneath, the floor still hums with the weight of history. There are voices trapped in the concrete, marks on the walls, scratches no paint can hide, and every so often we hear them. Because what's beneath Buenos Aires isn't just buried, it's alive. It's the architecture of fear, preserved in silence, protected by denial, waiting in the dark. So next time you walk a familiar street and your footstep echoes more than it should, stop, ask yourself, what's really beneath your feet? And more importantly, why don't they want you to know?